Hey everybody, I'm Bentley. You're watching the latest edition of the Pop Chronicle. In this edition of the Pop Chronicle, I'm going to dive into my 5 favorite movies in a specific genre, and I'm sure it says something about me, I just don't know what that is. But this genre is one of my favorites, the post-apocalyptic movie. There are plenty of films to choose from in this genre, especially during my lifetime, whether it be the original post-apocalyptic vision of the Omega Man or the Aussies' odd penchant for strange behavior in The Rover and The Quiet Earth. There's Andrei Tarkovsky's Russian classic Stalker, which basically came true a few years after its release with the disaster at Chernobyl, and mainstream classics like the Terminator series, 12 Monkeys, Planet of the Apes films, and Logan's Run. There are modern films that fit into this genre, like The Manic Doomsday, the dark yet hopeful Book of Eli, the underappreciated Oblivion, and the utter desolation and gloom of The Road. The Road. My 5 favorites, though, a mix of comedy, satire, action, and animation. Number 5, A Boy and His Dog. A young Don Johnson shines in this film about a boy named Vic who can communicate telepathically with his dog, Blood. The two inhabit a future wasteland populated by wandering bands of thugs and scavengers who take what they want and kill to survive until Blood sniffs out a young girl named Quilla June, who leads them to an underground society desperately in need of new blood. Johnson leaves the dog above ground and goes after the girl, finding nothing but trouble when he does. The happy faces of Down Under are not at all what they seem, and he and Blood are separated for the first time, and it quickly becomes a race to return to the surface and return to his only friend. This is by far my favorite Don Johnson role, if only for nostalgia's sake. Jason Robards does his usual amazing job as the leader of the Down Under community, and Suzanne Benton offers a fine take as Quilla June, but the real star of the film is Blood, voiced by Tim McIntyre. L.Q. Jones directed this film, which was essentially his last foray in the director's chair. I wish he had done more, because as much as this film has been derided over the years, it remains a huge part of my youth. There's something to be said about B-movies done right. When they're not done right, they can be really, really bad. But every now and then, somebody takes a minuscule budget and a sack of ideas and they come up with something magical, or at least hilarious. That's why I love Turbo Kid. It's one of my favorite low-budget flicks of the last decade. It's immensely watchable and enjoyable, and completely unhinged while retaining a childlike innocence and humor that leaves the viewer invested in the characters and their predicament. It's a love story in the wasteland, a survival story for geeks, and a story about robots and murderers who just want to find their place in the world. This is not for the faint of heart. There's lots of bikes, blood, and buffoonery, and it all adds up to a tremendous amount of fun. And there's just enough Michael Ironside to keep it classy. Well, sort of. I could go through a complete explanation of Turbo Kid, but that would completely ruin its aura. Just bring it up on your Netflix queue, watch it, and enjoy. Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, Isaac Hayes as the Duke, Harry Dean Stanton as the Brain, Donald Pleasance, Adrienne Barbeau, Lee Van Cleef. Throw them all together in a movie about the future of New York City being used as a prison, directed by the incomparable John Carpenter, and you have the all-time classic Escape from New York. Throw in Ox Baker, Frank Doubleday, and Ernest Borgnine, and you've got a masterpiece, folks. And Escape from New York is just that. If you haven't seen it, it is more than a classic. It is required viewing. Enough said. Number 2 is not just one film, it's a series of film. It's George Miller's Mad Max series. George Miller surprised people with the success of his first Mad Max film, and surprised even more when he arrived in theaters with a sequel. Critics who scoffed at the original idea began to take notice with The Road Warrior, and Miller's dystopian vision was not only taken seriously, but lauded by crowds and critics alike. He had taken an outlandish idea and made it palatable and believable, and he found a hero in Mel Gibson who played the titular Max with complete sincerity and authenticity. With the third film in the series, Beyond Thunderdome, the story found a worldwide audience, and Gibson became the biggest star on the planet for a time, even garnering People's Sexiest Man Alive award along the way. Big names jumped on board, and it seemed as though the juggernaut was just getting rolling. And then Miller stopped it to make movies about talking pigs and penguins.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
But in the end, it seems the pull of Max was too strong. Mad Max Fury Road exploded in theaters with death-defying stunt work and award-worthy performances from an acclaimed crew and cast. The film was nominated for 10 Oscars and won 6, just missing out on Best Director and Best Picture awards. The mostly female cast, led by Charlize Theron, drew raves, and the film became a rallying cry for strong female characters, while Tom Hardy was more than apt in filling the large shoes left by Gibson. It was huge and amazing, and a film everyone should see at some point. Expected to be the final film in the series, Fury Road's success has led to a new chapter in the story of Max Rokitansky, as Mad Max The Wasteland is in pre-production stages. I can't wait to see what happens next.
As the world fell, each of us in our own way was broken. It was hard to know who was more crazy. Me or everyone else.
While the Mad Max films are by far my favorite live-action films in this genre, there's not much that could take the place of Pixar's WALLE. An animated classic, and for good reason. Andrew Stanton's WALL-E is amazingly adept at touching on every single human emotion. It seamlessly moves between joy and sadness, humor and despair, and it makes you fall in love with a waste-gathering robot within the first 10 minutes of screen time. There's so much to digest in this film. The love story of WALL-E and Eve, the allegorical context of a ship full of lazy, obese people forced to leave an Earth they killed and abandoned, hope for survival, and the always overbearing trope of man's reliance on machines, which is finally done right for once. Everything about this story and about the film itself is perfect. Things that could have been offensive or treated with sweetness, and story points that could have been handled in a ham-fisted manner are given grace and subtlety. In future generations, when people look back at this era of filmmaking, they'll see the films of legendary directors who yearned for greatness and the actors who gave tremendous performances, but they'll look at Pixar and their animation for the films that defined our time. They just keep churning out quality, amazing work, time after time after time.
WALL-E.
So those are my 5 favorite films about the world after the world. If you get a chance, check them out.